We're jumping into part 2 of our series, Let's Be Human Again. And today, last week, I talked about to be human is to be in relationship. The fact that as human beings, God created us to be in relationship with Him and to be in relationship with each other. You see that from the very beginning. He creates Adam to be in relationship with Him, and then Adam and Eve to be in relationship with Him and in relationship with each other. It's hardwired in us to be in community, to be in relationship. But over the course of the last 2 years, for many of us, it's been isolation over community. And it's been fear over influence, hasn't it? That we've isolated ourselves into these smaller, deeper circles with 1 or 2 or 3 people, and we've lost our greater community. And out of fear for what's happening in the world around us and where other people are at and what their stance is and what we've seen them post online, we've lost our greater influence. And we know deep down that there's something about our relationships and our humanity that's just not right anymore. In some ways, it's a little bit warped. In other ways, I would say in some of us, it's broken. Like, what does it mean to be in a relationship? How do we restart relationships? How do we find our community and our influence again? Now, what we talked about was, hey, what it means to be human. We're designed to be in relationship. And then the other thing we talked about, which is really the theme for this series, is you are blessed to be a blessing. If you're watching online, put it in the chat to remind yourself, you are blessed to be a blessing. The idea that as human beings, the way that God has wired us is that He blesses us to be a blessing to other people. That's a part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. In fact, He begins that call on Abraham's life in Genesis 12, just 12 chapters over from when He creates Adam and Eve. You are blessed to be a blessing, and that's the lineage. In fact, in the New Testament it says, if you're a follower of Jesus, you are a son or a daughter of Abraham. You are blessed to be a blessing. That's one of the most human things you can do. And I actually think it's the key, one of the keys to rebuilding relationships again. But it leads to this question: how do you bless the people in a world that feels so polarized? That's what I want to talk about today. How do you bless people in a world that feels like it's so them versus them, mask versus no mask, vax versus unvax, left versus right? How do you bless people in a world where you're not actually sure where your friend stands? You're not sure what your colleague thinks about? You're not sure how crazy your neighbor has become over the last 2 years? And how do I rebuild relationships with people and bless them in such a polarized world? And I've been doing a lot of reading on how polarized are we really? Are we really as polarized as we think we are? And if we are, how have we changed over the last 2 years? And there's been a lot written about this, and I want to share with you some of the things I've discovered as we kick things off this morning. Now, here is a little bit of, I think, what we've experienced over the last 2 years. We kind of have this feuding ideologies. You have people on one pole and people on the other pole. People on the left, people on the right. I'm getting political already. Some of you get nervous, right? Vaxxed, unvaxxed. Maybe it's masks, no masks. That there are people on the, and we see these people on the poles. And what I mean by the poles are the people who are on the extremes. And we see people on the extremes all the time. And you know where we find them, right? Online. We find them online. And we see them on Facebook, we see them on Instagram, and we really see them on Twitter. And what happens is we see these people and we think, man, the world is getting so crazy. It's getting so polarized, right? And we think, how am I going to be a blessing to anybody? Like, what if my neighbor's like that? What if my friend's like that? What if my colleague is like that? And where we find ourselves, most of us, is we find ourselves here. And one issue is pulling us one way, and one issue is pulling us another way, and they're saying, feels like it's like you got to join a team. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to be on our side. Like, we're the right side. Like, you got to join our team. You got to join our ideological team. And here's what's really interesting. This is why this feels so tense. Because it's not really about ideology anymore. This is what you learn when you read about this. It's become about identity. It's not about ideas anymore. We thought the internet would be this age of like, man, we're going to have all this discussion of the marketplace of ideas. It's not the marketplace of ideas. It's the whole world of identity. Whose team are you on? Are you on my team? Are you on their team? And what happens is people on the extremes are looking for community, and they find community on the extremes. The more extreme I am, the more other extreme people I find, and so I'm starting to find some community. And what happens is it feels like we've got to pick sides. And then if you pick a side on one thing, it means a whole lot of things about you. And what happens is you hear phrases like this: if you don't stand for something, you don't stand for anything. And there's that tension around you got to pick. And as soon as you pick, if you say you're anti-mask, all of a sudden it's like, well, you probably like guns and you like hunting and you like there's like a whole list of things about you now that are true. Because it's not about ideas anymore. It's about identity. Now, here's what I want to tell you. Our world feels more polarized because our ideology is becoming too fused with our identity. It's not about exchanging ideas. It becomes about identity now. Whose team are you on? Now, here's what you need to know. There's a book that has been so helpful to me called Breaking the Social Media Prison by a guy named Christopher Bale. And Pew Research did a study on Twitter, which I would argue is the most political of all the platforms. And on Twitter, 6% of the users are prolific political tweeters. Twitter users is probably a cooler word to use. That's 6%. And they're responsible for 73% of the tweets about national politics. 6%. That what happens is when you look online, the truth is there's a small number of people who are out there a lot. And so they seem loud, but loud actually doesn't mean large. In his book, this is what he says. He says, partisan warfare, it seemed, is so often more about status and signaling and bonding than persuading others. It's not about an exchange of ideas anymore. It's about whose team are you on. And the truth is, when you read about this, 80, 90%, 95% of the world of people, you, me, we live here in the middle. We're just regular people trying to figure it out. And we're not all on the left. We're not all on the right. Not all our ideas are leftist. Not all of our ideas are rightist, if that's a word. We're not all on the extreme. We're just people in the middle trying to figure it out, trying to have a conversation, right? But the world, we think it's more polarized than it really is. You know what they've learned? They've studied and learned that over the last 10 years, our ideas about politics, where you stand, hasn't actually really changed that much. It's just a small group of people who've made the world feel more polarized. So how do you bless people in the midst of that? How do we bless all these people? How do we make an incredible difference? Even how do we bless these people? Well, I want to look today at how did Jesus bless people in his polarized world. You see, Jesus' world was really polarized. That on one hand, you had the religious leaders, the Pharisees, who are like, hey, you're a rabbi, you should be more religious like us. You should see, you don't follow all the rules we follow. How come you're not doing all the things we do? That was one side. Then on the other side, you had the Romans. The Israelites were living under Roman rule. And they were like the Romans, the world. And it was like, are you with us, the religious people? Or are you with Rome? Are you with the world? Are you on the other side? Jesus, which side are you on? Pick a side. Tell us who you're with. And Jesus says, I'm going to show you a new way. I'm going to show you a new way. I'm going to show you what it means to bless. And that's what we're going to look at today. In Matthew chapter 9, we see Jesus. It says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector's booth. Follow me and be my disciple, Jesus said to Matthew. And so Matthew got up and followed him. And later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home. as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. Now, let me stop there. An interesting thing about what Jesus is doing here. Jesus is getting together at a party, at a dinner, with a bunch of people who the Pharisees would look down on. Tax collectors, who were Jewish people working for Rome, not just taxing them, but often ripping them off. And then a whole other bunch of disreputable sinners. All kinds of people who would steal from people, prostitutes, all these people they would put in this category. And it says, but when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with such scum? Here's what I want you to know about Jesus. I don't want you to miss this, because this is a really powerful thing. The thing you need to know about what it was like in the time of the New Testament, when you ate with people, who you ate with was like your social score. It was like your credit score, but for your social life. Who you ate with was what your score was. And what happens is Jesus would eat with all kinds of people, even the most disreputable people. And he was turning this whole idea on its head. And Jesus talked about the table all the time. Do you know that? Jesus was always at tables. He was always at parties. You know that in Luke, it says, they say, man, Jesus must be a drunk because he's always hanging out with people who are drinking. He's always at parties. He's always at tables. In fact, when you look at the teaching of Jesus, what's it about? It's about everybody's welcome at the table. It's about where am I going to sit at the table, the head of the table or the foot of the table. It's about the prodigal son who comes home to a table. It's constantly about tables. For him, what he was doing when he sat at a table was making a point. And he's doing that with the Pharisees right here. It says, when Jesus heard this is what he said. He said, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. And then he added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. What's he saying here? Hey, Pharisees, you're so busy with all your sacrifices at the temple and following all the rules and doing all the sacrificial rituals, you're missing the whole point. It's about grace. It's about mercy. It's about these people who are around me at this table. And he says this, for I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, the Pharisees, but those who actually know that they're sinners. For Jesus, so much of his life and ministry was about sitting at tables and going to parties. You know, if I said to you, hey, talk to me about how Jesus blessed people, you'd probably say, oh, well, when he healed that blind guy and he healed that deaf guy and he preached that really great sermon. I mean, then he was blessing people. Don't forget he died and rose again. That's blessing people. You know how Jesus blessed people? He ate with them. Jesus made it a priority to eat with people. To eat with people. In fact, Jesus designed it. I mean, God designed us as human beings to eat together. We've been eating together since the very first day humans were created. We've always been eating together. There's nothing more human than having a meal together. There's nothing more human than sitting across the table from someone else. I would actually argue there's something spiritual, almost sacramental, about gathering around a table. There's something special about a table. Eating is, it's disarming. It's personal. It's intimate in a way. Over the course of COVID, I've seen some people posting some pretty extreme things, friends of mine. You know what I've tried to do? I've tried to have coffee with them. And you know what happens when I sit down and I have coffee with them? They're not as extreme as you think they are. It was just a bad day on Facebook. And you sit down and you realize, right, they're a human being and I'm a human being, and they're trying to figure this out and I'm trying to figure this out. And they're isolated, I'm isolated. And I think this pandemic sucks, and so do they. What if I'd never had coffee with them? Think about that. What would I have thought of them then? See, eating with someone, sitting across from someone, it's disarming, it's personal, it's intimate as you look at each other eye to eye and have an actual real conversation. There is nothing more human than that. Henry Nouwen, who's written some incredible books, he says this: when we invite friends for a meal, we do much more than offer them food for their bodies. We offer friendship, fellowship, good conversation, intimacy, and closeness. I love this part. When we say, help yourself, take some more, don't be shy, have another glass, we offer our guests not only our food and our drink, but ourselves. A spiritual bond grows, and we become food and drink for one another. When you eat with someone, when you have coffee with someone, when you sit down and share a meal together, whether that's Subway on a picnic table or whatever it is, a fajita, you know what meals do? You know what eating does? Eating shows someone that you see them. You can't sit at a table with someone and not communicate just with your body language. I see you. I see you. I see who you are. I see you as you are. I see you as another human being trying to figure this world out like me. When I was the student ministry director here years ago, what I used to do is the volunteers would have different small groups, but then there would be different kids that were just really hard to connect. They were making poor choices, getting into trouble. I'd try to have lunch with those kids. And I remember taking one of them for lunch, and we went out for, it was like a burrito or a Subway, or they all taste the same after a while, let's be honest. And so we finished. I mean, this guy had made some poor choices. He was suspended from school, a lot of problems. And in his mind, you know, there wasn't one adult who was pleased with him. There wasn't one adult that valued him. There wasn't one adult who saw him. Now, I know that wasn't true, but that's how he felt. And I remember when we finished that lunch, and he said, man, Jeff, thanks for lunch. And I said, no problem. I said, do you want to get dessert? He's like, really? I said, yeah. He said, well, I guess we could go to like Wendy's and get a Frosty. And I'm like, let's go to Marble Slab. Premium. And we went there, and he's like, well, what can I have? I'm like, have whatever you want. He's like, I'm going to get the Smarties. Can I get the score? I'm like, get the score. Can I get the licorice or whatever it was? Get it. Get whatever you want. And he's like, really? He's like, that's expensive. I'm like, don't worry. Carrie Newhoff pays for all of this. It's true. That's what I used to tell kids. Carrie pays for it all. And he just piled it on. And the joy I felt watching that kid eat that ice cream was unbelievable. Because he felt seen. He felt valued. Sitting at a meal with someone says, I see you. I got a thing for tables. Some of you know that. And this is actually the table we raised our kids at. In fact, I noticed today there's a whole bunch of smuts, babe, from the high chair. I don't know about you, but we got one kid that's messier than the other. I won't say who. And our kids are too big to sit at this table anymore. But this is the table we raised our kids at. And you know how I grew up? I grew up in a house where there were always people at the table. We were always adding more water to the soup bowl. I remember walking away from dinner hungry because we had divided between 8 instead of 6 because someone showed up unexpectedly. There was someone at our house for coffee almost every single day. And I watched the power of meals with people, of eating together. Let me tell you the most powerful moment in most meals. When we have people at our house, it's usually near the end, when there's nothing left but coffee. And it usually starts with a phrase like this: "So we wanted to tell you something." So we wanted to tell you something. We're pregnant. So we wanted to tell you something. We got engaged. These are awesome moments at the table. Intimate moments, moments of I see you. So we wanted to tell you something. We got a diagnosis. We wanted to tell you something. We feel like we're going to split. We wanted to tell you something. We're going to buy our first house. All of these types of conversations happen at tables. There's something sacred about eating together that Jesus knew. N.T. Wright, who's an incredible theologian at Oxford, he writes this about the communion table, the Last Supper that Jesus was at, that we're going to reflect with today. He says, when Jesus himself wanted to explain to his disciples what his forthcoming death was all about, he didn't give them a theory. He gave them a meal. He gave them a meal. A meal says, I see you. Now, before that Last Supper meal, Jesus did something else. Something else that was a blessing in the midst of a polarized world. Something else that was something that brought so much humanity to a moment. And I would be remiss for us not to look at that today. In fact, this is what it says in John 13, before the Last Supper. It says, Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God and would return to God. Jesus is in a moment where he realizes how much power he has. He realizes how much authority he has. He realizes what the plan is. He realizes that he's the one in charge. And so it says, so this is what he did. He said, so he got up from the table and he took off his robe and he wrapped a towel around his waist. And he poured water into a basin, and then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around them. You and I cannot begin to imagine this moment. I cannot imagine how quiet it was in that room. The lowly servant who would normally wash everybody's gnarly feet, because people's feet were gnarly, right? There were no pink Nikes. There's nothing like that. With sandals, if that. And you know what's worse? There were no nail clippers either. No pedicures. And the lowly servant isn't there to wash the feet. And you can see the disciples kind of like avoiding the situation, you know? It's like task avoidance. Like when you're like, oh, maybe she'll put out the garbage if I stay in bed a little bit longer. That kind of thing. It's just my house, but you know what I mean. Task avoidance. And Jesus takes off his robe and he fills the basin and he washes their feet. And it says after washing their feet, he put on his robe again and he sat down and he asked, do you understand what I was doing? He says, you call me teacher and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, the one in charge, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. And then he says this, now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. He will bless you for doing them. Jesus made it a priority to serve people. He made it a priority to serve people. My friend Dave Ferguson, he says this, that Jesus put down his crown that day and put on an apron. Jesus made it a priority to serve the people around him. You see it all through his life. He continues to serve and serve and serve. He's healing people. He's walking with people. He's ministering to people. He's washing people's feet. He made it a priority to serve them. And in this moment, he lays down his crown and he puts on his apron. Let me tell you, one of the things that is at the heart of why we were created as human beings: humility. You know that in Latin, the word hume is for dirt. And Adam was made from the dirt. And humility is what we are called to get dirty in serving the people around us. God actually designed us to be people who showed humility. Humility is at the heart of what God designed us for as human beings. And like eating, serving is disarming, it's personal, and it's intimate. Man, washing someone's feet, that gets pretty intimate. And eating shows someone that you see them. But serving someone shows them that you value them. You want your influence back in the world around you. You want your influence back in the people around you. You want your influence back at work, in your neighborhood, with your friends around you. Serve them. You don't forget the people who serve you. You remember. At my house, 14 years ago, we moved here. And we had a group of people from the church say, hey, we want to help you. And what they did was they painted a bunch of rooms in our house. And then I had another friend who helped me lay flooring in a couple of rooms because the house needed a lot of lipstick. And even today, 14 years later, when I stand in my son's room, I remember Jen and Sarah painted this room. I remember Rich painted this room. I remember Andy spent 2 days with me on knees and knuckles laying this flooring in these 2 rooms. You don't forget. You don't forget the people who serve you because they show you that you are valued. It's amazing. There are people in our church. Some of you are these people. You came to Christ in our church. You found Jesus in our church. And what amazes me is so often, you know what they remember? The first person who greeted them at the door. She was the first person who met me. She was the first person who helped me. He was the first person who welcomed my kid to preschool. He was the first person who welcomed my kid to Upstreet. They remember the people who served them. Serving shows someone that they're valued. This week, I want to ask you to do 2 things. As you go through your life this week, there's 2 things I want to ask you to do. And the first thing I want you to do today, at the latest when you get home, I want you to calendar a meal with someone. I want you to sit down with your spouse if you're married and you need to do that. Look at the calendar and say, when are we going to eat with someone this week? And who will it be? And don't make it your mother-in-law who you have a meal with every week anyway. Your neighbor. Your colleague, that person you haven't talked to for an entire year, and say, when are we going to have a meal with them? If you're really bold, schedule 1 a week for the next month. Now, I already know what many of you are saying, but my house, it doesn't look like that Instagram house I see that my friend has all the time. And I'm like, what if the house isn't perfect? Or maybe for you, it's like, you know what? I'm just really not a good cook. Let me tell you, first of all, the people don't care that your house is a mess. Only you care about that. People want to be seen. They don't want to, oh, wow, I'm so impacted by your Instagram house. That's not what we're about. People want to be seen. They want to be valued. They want to feel human again. And how clean your floors are does not matter to that. People are out there begging for humanity. Let's not get overly obsessed about how clean our house is. For some of you, you're saying, well, I'm just not a really good cook. And I would say to you, then just order out. And if you can't afford that, I get that. Then have coffee with someone. Hey, do you want to come over for coffee? Do you want to come over for dessert? Do you want to come over for a cookie? I mean, anything. Now, if you're not comfortable having people in your home or they're not comfortable coming in your home, then you guys can go out and meet for coffee and meet at a restaurant. There's so many ways to do this. But here's what I know. And here's what I want for you. Here's what I know will happen. Not only will they feel human again, but so will you. So will you. When you laugh at that table, when you catch up with one another, when you have a conversation, when you share something, when you wrestle over who's going to pick up the bill, all that stuff, you're going to feel human again. And so are they. The second thing I want you to do is to serve someone this week personally. Proximity is what you need to serve someone. So serve someone in a personal way. This doesn't have to be complicated either. When you're on your way to work this week and you go to pick up a cup of coffee, just pick up 2 and take it to your colleague and say, hey, I just wanted to bring this to you today. Look at the people around you and see where they need someone to serve them and jump in their corner. Can I help you with that? Can I give you a hand with that? Let's not do what the disciples did and kind of like, okay, well, let's wait and see if someone else will watch the feet. Serve someone personally. Here's the thing about our world right now. It feels so polarized, and it feels so upside down. And that's so good for us who follow Jesus. Because if we are people whose identity is not rooted in some changing in ideology, but is actually rooted in Jesus, we know how to break through the polarization and point people to what it means to be human again, and point people to what it means to follow Jesus and how God designed them and what they were actually created to do, to have a relationship with God. And all it might take is for you and for me to be the kind of people and to be the kind of church who's willing to sit across from people and just have a cup of coffee, to just have dinner. I actually wonder if we could transform Simcoe County just one meal at a time. By sitting down with people who are broken, and sitting down with people who need healing, and sitting down with people who are like, I don't know what to do in the midst of this world, and to sit down with them and say, as a follower of Jesus, I see you. And I think you're valuable. Maybe one of the most human things that you and I can do. And what we're going to do today in a moment is we're going to reflect. We're going to reflect on the death and resurrection of Jesus and what that means, how his forgiveness in our lives makes it possible to do the thing we were designed to do and have a relationship with Jesus. And we're going to do that over a little meal as we reflect with communion together. A meal that is the greatest picture of humility that the world has ever known. Let me pray for us. God, we come to you today and as we sing, and in a few moments after the band comes, we participate in communion, we pray that you would speak to us about how you served us, about this meal you designed to reflect on the humility of your life. God, make us people whose hearts are open to people around us again, who are human again, who see people and say, I want to eat with you, I want to serve you, I want to be present with you in the way that Jesus was. God, you've blessed us so much, not so that we could hoard your blessings, but so that we could be blessed to be a blessing. Thank you for the way that you served us on the cross. And that you died and you rose again God, that you would give your only Son to make it possible for us to be in relationship with you. We pray all these things in your name.